So, what do you buy more gold or more silver? What's the ratio for you, Jim?
These days I buy much more silver than gold because, gold is near its all-time high. Silver's down 50% from its all-time high. So on a value basis, silver is much cheaper. And who knows, but I buy much more silver than gold these
All
days.
righty. Joining us
Do you
back on Wall Street Silver is the legendary Jim Rogers. How are you doing today, Jim?
I'm fine. I got jet lag and I'm in quarantine, but other than that, I'm great.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you for coming down to Wall Street Silver and talking to us, Jim. Last time we talked to you, you had North Korean silver coins. How did you acquire them?
Well, I do have some North Korean coins because my theory is that the risk is the price of silver. And I'm very bullish on the price of silver, so it's not much risk as far as I could see. But more important, when North Korea disappears, which I expect in the next few years, there'll be great collector's items. So you get a double play. Yes, I own US silver. This is the silver dollar. I don't expect the US to disappear. I mean, who knows? the rate Mr. Biden's going, who knows? It could, but the silver in the North Korean coin and the US coin are the same, but the collector more. And I got them mainly on the black market. I know a guy in China who, when I'm there, he will sell me a few.
Is there an actual mint in North Korea that's making these from some mine that's operating in North Korea, or do you know?
No, I know. North Korea, believe it or not, as recently as 1970, North Korea was richer than South Korea, partly because North Korea has huge natural resources, including gold and silver mines. In fact, I'm told that there are lots of big, huge piles of tailings from gold and silver in North Korea where they refine them. But since they're not terribly efficient, they just throw out the scrap. So somebody's going to make a fortune buying the scrap someday and re-refining or whatever. But no, I mean, it's illegal for Americans to go to North Korea now. I have been a couple of times. I went before it was illegal, and I bought some on my first trip, not second trip.
So speaking of world, the Asian world, you've compared the Japanese economy to what's going on in the United States. You kind of drew a parallel to it. Do you see the major indices in the US kind of tracking along with the Nikkei, collapsing and then not returning to highs after decades?
What, the US or Japan?
The US, like following what Japan did.
Well, the US is printing, I mean, as you guys know, it's never happened in world history that nobody's printed as much money as Washington is. I mean, other countries are trying to keep up. Japan, the guy goes to work every day and prints what he says is unlimited. That's his word, unlimited amounts of money. So it's happening all over the world. And all of this money sloshing around has to go somewhere. It takes a long time to build a factory, but I can go online and buy some Amazon, in 10 seconds. I don't like what's happening. I don't like it at all, but I can see what's happening. I'm not blind, and it's going into financial markets. And at the moment, I don't see anything to stop it. Some financial markets are getting bullish. The Amazons, the 10 cents, the Samsungs go up every day. Other stocks are now catching on, so the bubble is foaming in the U.S. and elsewhere. So I don't see it ending yet. I'm not very good at market timing, but I do know how this movie ends. I do know, I've seen it before, and I know in the end a lot of people are going to be sorry.
If you look at the other hyperinflation type, we won't go back to Weimar, but let's talk about some of the other more modern examples, whether it's Zimbabwe or Venezuela. And granted, they weren't world reserve currency, but while they were printing and destroying their currencies in recent years, their stock markets just kept going through the roof. Is that sort of how you see this playing out? As long as the Fed has the juice flowing, the stock market just goes up until the Fed either raises rates or pulls the plug?
the money's got to go somewhere. And the first two examples you mentioned, Venezuela and Zimbabwe, it was a form of real assets. You know, you had to put your money in, you wanted to put your money into something real. Silver and gold obviously would work in both of those places, but also stock markets, because in theory, those are real assets, and you own a real company, and you own a factory, or you own whatever. That's what happened in Germany. Weimar Germany, you mentioned it. Yeah, it's 100 years ago, but still, the same principle is applied throughout history. You know, that if you debase a currency, some of us want to own something real, whether it's silver, gold, stocks, whatever. We know that the money is disappearing.
Now, would you, you know, people like Bill Gates have become, it's been reported in the media, he's become one of the largest owners of farmland in the United States in the past year. You know, that's the same theory. It's hard assets.
Well, I'm very keen on agriculture, and buying farmland is a wonderful, has been, as I've talked about before, a wonderful investment. If you want to be a farmer, being a farmer is probably the best thing. Buying farmland and farming it, you get all sorts of benefits in the next decade or two, as Mr. Gates undoubtedly knows. I don't want to be a farmer, you know, for whatever reasons. But if you like being outdoors and you like that kind of life, nothing, well, not much is better than being a farmer in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Maybe being a silver miner or a gold miner, but you got to find the silver mine in the first place. I am not buying farms. I am, well, I take that back. I am a director of one big farm company, but mainly what I've been doing is buying agricultural products. You know, there's an agricultural ETF on the New York Stock Exchange called RJA. I buy that and I continue to buy for a basket of 20 or 22 agricultural products, cotton, wheat, etc.
You know, we have a lot of young members in our Reddit group, and I'm just curious if you give them any kind of advice as to what industries they should go in. Obviously, farming, anything related to commodities, anything else?
Well, certainly as I look around the world, bonds are certainly a bubble. I wouldn't buy bonds. I do own a few short-term special situations bonds, but bonds are certainly a bubble. Bonds have never been this expensive in the history of the world, and that's all over the world. So bonds are a bubble. We mentioned that some stocks are beginning to form bubbles. You see many of the signs that have happened before. Property, real estate in Korea, New Zealand, many parts of the world, some parts of the US, as you guys know better than I do, are forming bubbles. The cheapest asset class I know are commodities. I mean, silver's down 50% from its all-time high. That's not a bubble when something's down 50. Sugar's down 70% from its all-time high. Mm-hmm. Those numbers are not bubble numbers.
Mm-hmm. Are you buying sugar or any type of plantation, sugar plantations?
I own a few shares of a Malaysian sugar company, but again, mainly these days, I'm buying the commodities themselves through the ETFs. The world has proved many times, studies have proved many times that for most people, ETF investing is the best way, whether investing in stocks or commodities or anything else. And I'm lazy. So it's easy to buy ETFs, and the agricultural ETF has sugar, has other things. And if I weren't so lazy, I would be buying sugar futures. Might be better than gold and silver, and that's a complicated statement, but there's certainly, I don't see too much risk. So sugar is down 70% from its all-time high. It's staggering. If you look out the window, you're not going to see many things that are down 70% from their all-time highs.
So it sounds like you're planning for the sort of commodity super cycle that, you know, people talk about.
I do expect commodities to be going up as a general class for a while. Whether it's a quote super cycle, I don't know. I'm not as smart as those people on TV who talk about a super cycle, but I do expect it. I told you, the cheapest asset class I can see anywhere in the world are real assets, commodities. And throughout history, when people print a lot of money, real assets have been a way not just to protect yourself, but to make money. I mean, the price of silver always goes up a lot. The price of gold always goes up when people debase a currency. Maybe it's different this time, but it's never this time. Those are very dangerous words. It's different this time. It ain't ever different.
Now, you were one of the pioneers in the hedge fund space, and that industry has just grown exponentially over the decades. You know, there's also been an explosive growth in family offices. And recently, those two entities have kind of hit the news between the whole GameStop with Melvin Capital getting squeezed and the short squeeze, and then Archegos, you know, kind of blowing up. What's your view of the new breed of hedge funds, family offices? Do you see this as a big systemic risk?
Well, family offices, I mean, they never had that name. I mean, now I realize, oh gosh, I have a family office. I didn't realize I have a family office. But you know, it's a place where we look after my affairs. Now I can tell people, oh yeah, I'm a family office too. So I know that people of means for many decades, many centuries have figured out a way to look after those assets, whatever they were called. So I don't see that as a systemic risk, just that very fact. I'm sure some of them are going to get out of control and make many mistakes because it's all hot right now. Hedge funds are a bit different. You know, I read recently, I mean, there are thousands of hedge funds now. We cannot have that many smart 29-year-olds in the world. The world just doesn't work that way, as you know. But now if you go around and you knock on doors and say, I'm a hedge fund, you know, people give you money. It's stunning, it's shocking. Some of them are going to turn out to be smart and successful and will survive the coming bear markets whenever or wherever they are. They always have. Yes, back when we started it, I can remember all of hedge funds in the world. You know, you could count them on one hand. We could all sit and have coffee together. But it was, I mean, it's a very efficient and profitable way to make money if you did it right. Now, of course, everybody's doing it. But as I say, I hope all of them are the smartest 29-year-olds in the history of the world, but history shows they're not.
Jim, did you hear?
Interesting aside, if you would, back in those days of the late 60s, early 70s, a book was published called The New Breed on Wall Street. The New Breed on Wall Street. Most of that new breed disappeared. Most of that new breed disappeared. So when somebody tells you it's different this time, or don't you know, you say, I don't know, sorry, goodbye.
Yeah, that's funny.
Jim, did you hear about the news in El Salvador, how they're making Bitcoin legal tender there? What do you think about that?
I saw that. Well, El Salvador's got to do something. I don't know if you've ever been there. Occasionally they get it right. We will see. I mean, I don't know much about the guy who did it. I read, but you know, it's the press, so who knows? I read that he is a bit of a charlatan, but I have no idea. Maybe he's a genius, maybe not. I don't know. From what I have read, he's got to do something, and that's his latest ploy. Whether, I mean, I think I've given you guys my views on cryptocurrencies. Yeah. I had rather have silver, gold, things like that. And this is U.S. silver, but I have English silver. What is Russian silver, Canadian silver?
Oh, Russian silver.
Yeah, what's the Russian one like? Is that from a sovereign Russian mint?
Yes. The Russians have huge amounts of silver and gold, as you may know that. Russia, for all its faults, has huge amounts of natural resources. I mean, it's remarkable. No, I can't read Russian, but this says it's pure. Says it's 99% pure, and it says it's 1 ounce. So here it is.
Nice.
So Jim, speaking of Russia and China, they both have been kind of hoarding precious metals. How do you see that playing out on the world stage with fiat currencies? I think they're going to establish very strong asset-backed currencies, hard currency?
Well, in the past, well, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency and medium of exchange for a few decades now. But the world's medium of exchange is supposed to be neutral. You're supposed to be able to use it anywhere under any circumstances, et cetera. That's why it's the world's international medium of exchange. Washington has started in the last few years, if they get angry at you, they put sanctions on you and say, oh, you cannot use the US dollar. Well, that is not what an international medium of exchange is supposed to be, or reserve currency. So many countries are now looking for a competitor for obvious reasons. So for political reasons, people don't want to get stuck holding dollars in case they get angry at them. So they have started looking for a competitor. China, Russia, India, Brazil. I mean, various countries are in this movement to find something to compete with or replace the US dollar. And by the way, history shows that international currencies, reserve currencies, have only lasted 100, 150 years throughout history. The British pound, French franc, Dutch guilder, all of them had their day in the sun, but then disappeared for whatever reason. And the reason was always that they printed too much and had too much debt. Pretty simple. As I say, I've seen this movie before. The US has been doing this has been on top for, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 years. We could figure it out. But we're taking these political actions, and we're now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. No nation in world history has ever been in debt as deeply as the US is. I don't like saying this. I'm an American citizen and taxpayer like many people, but facts are facts. So the world is looking for a replacement, as it always has for hundreds of years. And something will evolve as the replacement, or certainly the competitor, to the US dollar. Do I like it? No, of course not. I pay my taxes in US dollars too, like everybody else, like most, not all of you, but most of us. So this is not good for the future of my children or of America or of Americans. But one has to face facts. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. And when that happens, one has to find a way to protect yourself. And as I look at history, not as I look at it, as anybody looks at history, precious metals and real assets have been the way to come through the collapse of any currency, or even the decline of any currency, or the debasement of any currency. This is simple facts. This is simple history. I mean, we had a president recently in the US who didn't know history, or if he did, he didn't understand. He thought he was smarter than history. Well, I know I am not smarter than history. I know that not many people are smarter than history. And when you debase a currency, always it has led to problems, and it has led to many people looking for real assets to protect themselves and to make money. And historically, as you all know better than many people, silver, gold, agriculture, things like that are the way to play.
You know, we're this year, it's estimated the U.S. government will raise about $4 trillion in taxes. We're probably going to spend somewhere like 7 or 8 trillion in expenditures. So we're probably going to have a deficit on the order of 3 or 4 trillion once you count all the stimulus that they're passing. And now they want to do an infrastructure bill too. So, you know, we're at 29 trillion in debt officially. Who knows what it's unofficially. And we're adding 3 trillion or more.
I'll just interrupt you 1 second. I love your train of thought, but I want to just, is 29 trillion on the balance sheet?
Yeah.
But off balance sheet,
yeah.
I mean,
it's Medicare.
Over 200.
Yeah,
if you count everything, it's over 200, not 29.
I agree.
29 is what they admit to.
Yeah.
Much.
No, it's terrible.
So you're referring to the unfunded liabilities for future promises for Medicare and Social Security and things like that, and all the other promises.
Like many things, shipping. There are many things that they don't count when they count. Sorry.
No, thank you for clarifying, and you're exactly right, sir. But I guess my point is, there's really, we don't have a Paul Volcker right now in the Fed, or any of the PhDs at the Fed. They weren't raised with that philosophy or that mindset. Is there any way to pull out of this, or do you think it's just their only play remaining in their toolkit is they just got to print? There's no raising rates. There's no stopping there's no taper coming. They got to keep buying. Is there any way to pull out of this?
Well, that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they all have Ivy League education, Ivy League degrees, and that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're trying to keep their jobs. And the only way they know to keep their jobs is to print a lot of money and keep the game going. I know that the game will end if they keep this up. You know, America's had 3 central banks in our history. The first disappeared for a variety of reasons. I would submit to you that this one's going to disappear too, because they're making such horrendous mistakes, and we're all going to have to pay for them. Now, if you ask them, they will say, I'm nuts. You know, I have an Ivy League education too, but who cares? You know, they say theirs is better, and that what they are doing is better. I'll tell you another interesting story. In 2008, the head economist at the central bank in Washington wrote an article and said, you know, we have about 1,000 PhDs, economics PhDs here, the finest, best educated PhDs in economics in the world, and we have 1,000 of them here at the Federal Reserve. But you know, there are people in America who say that we're making a mistake and that the housing bubble is going to pop and burst, and we're going to have serious, serious problems in the American economy. Who are these fools? He didn't use the word fools, but he basically suggested that they were fools. We have 1,000 of the smartest, best educated PhDs in economics in the world, and we know what we're doing, and these people don't have a clue. We have everything under control. Do not worry. And the head of the central bank in America at the time said, we have everything under control. Do not worry. We know what we're doing. Housing is not going to be a problem in the United States. Housing finance is not going to be a problem. Do not worry. Well, I think you know the rest of that story. I certainly know the rest of that story. And that's what they think. They really believe that they went to all the great schools. They think they're smarter than the rest of us. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe we're all dead wrong. Maybe the happy days are here again. Maybe it's different this time.
It sounds like a big confidence game, and we all know what confidence games really are all about, don't we?
Yes, but that's, as I said before, no international medium of exchange has ever survived, it's certainly not a currency, for over 100 years or so. Never. And yeah, it's a confidence, but they've all been confidence games. You know, when the Dutch guilder, you remember the expression, I have a Dutch uncle. Well, that's because everybody wanted to have a Dutch uncle, just like now everybody wants to have a US dollar uncle. All of these things have been around before, and you know how they wind up.
And in the future, everyone's going to want a silver bullion uncle, I think.
I will be very pleased to have an uncle, aunt, grandmother, whatever, as long as she has a lot of silver.
Yeah.
You know, I read your book, Investment Biker, must have been about 10, 15 years ago. It was one of the most enjoyable investment books I have ever read. Tell us about your trips around the world. Do you have another one planned? I think you've done 2 now.
I went around the world on a motorcycle in 1990, 91, 92, and then I went around the world in a car, 1999, 2000, 2001.
Nice.
I don't have another one planned right now. Right now I'm in quarantine. You know?
A trip around your hotel room is what you got planned, right?
Exactly. I cannot go to the lobby. I cannot move. I cannot do anything.
I'm assuming that has to be part of your best part of your education was those trips.
Yes, I will tell you that if you travel and you cross borders in the jungle and you have to find a place to eat and sleep and all of that, and you have to change money, it's an astonishing education. It will teach you. My wife, who went with me on the second trip, says repeatedly, and she's right, that she never had an education like that.
Wow.
And I will tell you, it's remarkable. I did it for adventure. I grew up in the backwoods of Alabama in a small town where my phone number was 5. So I wanted adventure. I wanted to see the world. That's why I did it. But it is an astonishing. When I went to university, I went from this small town in the backwoods of Alabama to a college in the Northeast. Forget the classes, forget the Ivy League professors. Most of them didn't know what they were doing. But going far away from home was an amazing education. I told my children, you can go to university if you want to anywhere in the world, but you have to go away. You cannot go to university near home because it teaches you a huge amount.
Well, I didn't go to one of those Ivy League schools, but Ivan did. Ivan went to Yale. Did you know that?
No, I'm just
Jim,
did you know you went to Yale? I didn't know that.
he looks like Skulls and Bones, doesn't he?
oh my goodness.
Wait, guys, somebody has to go to Yale. Don't be.
Yeah. Jim,
go ahead, Ivan.
Jim, I was just wondering, do you still go back to the backwoods of Alabama and go back to where you were raised, like when you were a childhood?
Well, yes, whenever I can. Last summer, my children and I, my daughter, she's 18 now, said, I don't know much about America and I want to see America. So she said, or I said, let's drive across America. So I said to her, she was 16 at the time, you plan the trip and we will drive from the Atlantic to the Pacific, which, sounds like a great adventure. Compared, and some of my adventures is not a great, but for a lot of people, it's a big adventure. So she organized it and we drove from the Atlantic to the Pacific, including going through Demopolis, Alabama.
Nice.
So we went to the family cemetery in Alabama. We visited my relatives in Alabama. Yes, we drove through Demopolis, Alabama again. And I don't get there as much as I used to, partly because A, my parents are dead now, and B, I live it's a long way from Singapore to Demopolis, Alabama. But I would certainly like to. I would love to go back as often as I can, but have to be practical.
You were telling us one of the reasons you relocated to Singapore was so your daughter could learn Chinese fluently. How is she completely fluent in Chinese? Was that all successful, that strategy?
I will tell you, Jim, it's a little bit shocking to me. Yes, the answer is yes. I speak no Chinese, but CCTV, which is the largest network in the world, Chinese network, has taken my daughters to Beijing 3 years in a row to put them on a special show during Chinese New Year, which is the height of TV viewing in China. It's astonishing. They keep telling me, your girls speak better Chinese than we do.
Really?
We own CCTV. Now, I speak no Mandarin, so I have nothing to do with it. But no, that has been extremely successful, not through any fault of my own. For whatever reason, these girls are genius at speaking Mandarin.
Wonderful. That'll be a real big advantage, I'm sure. Are they using it in their career?
Well, they're in school. One's 13.
I didn't know they were that young. I'm sorry.
She's in the 7th grade. Well, yes, they keep winning contests. Singapore has language contests periodically. They get invited to Beijing, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's always stunned at their Chinese, and especially in Singapore, where people don't speak great Chinese. I didn't know that when I came here. I mean, It's been a, no, Jim, that does not make you successful.
Mhm.
Yes, we hope it gives them an advantage. You can ask me in 25 years, how is it? You know, but if they wind up working in Chinese restaurants, at least they're going to be the maitre d', not going to be the dishwasher, because they speak such wonderful Mandarin.
Well, I hope you and I are still around in 25 years and I can ask you that.
I do too, and I hope we can go to the Chinese restaurant with my daughters and get us a good table.
Yeah.
You know, I have a question about the supply chain because, you know, any retail store you go into in New York, their inventory is just hit or miss with things. That's clothing, vitamins, pretty much anything. Do you see these issues getting worse? What kind of impact is it going to have on the world economy?
Well, Lee, you've answered the question. How can it not get worse?
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, I don't like saying it is. The U.S. is not doing a good job of running a country or society, an economy. Most of the rest of the world, if the U.S., if the largest economy in the world has problems, everybody, it reverberates to everybody. So I don't see, I mean, nobody spent a lot of money investing in any infrastructure or production or anything else in the last few years. You know, nobody spent a lot of money looking for oil since the fracking bubble burst. I mean, I can look out the window, I can read the paper, I can go on the internet and see what is happening and has happened. And I can see that this movie always ends badly.
Mhm. We want to really thank you for having joined us and sharing your knowledge with our younger audience. And we just really appreciate you giving back so much to the community, sir.
Yes,
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee, Jim, Ivan, etc. I've had a lot of fun with you guys every time. So I hope we can do this again sometime, but I hope that everybody watching this will get some knowledge. If you get some knowledge, you will get very worried about what's happening in the world. And if you get worried, you'll get prepared.
Mhm.
There are many people came to the, not many, but some people came out of the 30s, the Great Depression, rich. They figured out what was going on and they adjusted and made lots of money. Most did not, most did not. We're having big problems coming in the world. And if you get knowledge, you'll get prepared and you'll be okay. So you guys teach. Just keep your fundamentals sound, keep the knowledge coming, and everybody will be better off.
Thank you so
Here,
much,
Jim,
Jim.
thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.